You tried to throw a scare into Slim, and you couldn't make it stick. Slim throwed a scare into you. You're yellow as a frog belly. I don't care if you're the best welter in the country. You come for me and I'll kick your goddarn head off." Candy joined the attack with joy. "Glove full of Vaseline," he said disgustedly. Curly glared at him. His eyes slipped on past and lighted on Lenny, and Lenny was still smiling with delight at the memory of the ranch. Curly stepped over to Lenny like a terrier. "What the heck you laughing at?" Lenny looked blankly at him. "Huh?" Then Curly's rage exploded. "Come on, you big jerk! Get up on your feet! No big son of a gun is gonna laugh at me! I'll show you who's yellow!" Lenny looked helplessly at George, and then he got up and tried to retreat. Curly was balanced and poised. He slashed at Lenny with his left, and then smashed down his nose with the right. Lenny gave a cry of terror. Blood welled from his nose. "George!" he cried. "Make him leave me alone, George!" He backed until he was against the wall, and Curly followed, slugging him in the face. Lenny's hands remained at his sides. He was too frightened to defend himself. George was on his feet, yelling, "Get him, Lenny! Don't let him do it!" Lenny covered his face with his huge paws and bleated with terror. He cried, "Make him stop, George!" Then Curly attacked his stomach and cut off his wind. Slim jumped up. "The dirty little rat!" he cried. "I'll get him myself!" George put out his hand and grabbed Slim. "Wait a minute!" he shouted. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Get him, Lenny!" Lenny took his hands away from his face and looked about for George, and Curly slashed at his eyes. The big face was covered with blood. George yelled again, "I said get him!" Curly's fist was swinging when Lenny reached for it. The next minute, Curly was flopping like a fish on a line, and his closed fist was lost in Lenny's big hand. George ran down the room. "Let go of him, Lenny! Let go!" But Lenny watched in terror the flopping little man whom he held. Blood ran down Lenny's face. One of his eyes was cut and closed. George slapped him in the face again and again, and still Lenny held on to the closed fist. Curly was white and shrunken by now, and his struggling had become weak. He stood crying, his fist lost in Lenny's paw. George shouted over and over, "Let go his hand, Lenny! Let go! Slim, come help me while this guy got any hand left!" Suddenly Lenny let go of his hold. He crouched, cowering against the wall. "You told me to, George," he said miserably. Curly sat down on the floor, looking in wonder at his crushed hand. Slim and Carlson bent over him. Then Slim straightened up and regarded Lenny with horror. "We gotta get him into a doctor," he said. "Looks to me like every bone in his hand is bust." "I didn't wanna," Lenny cried. "I didn't wanna hurt him." Slim said, "Carlson, you get that candy wagon hitched up. We'll take him into Soledad and get him fixed up." Carlson hurried out. Slim turned to the whimpering Lenny. "It ain't your fault," he said. "This punk sure had it coming to him. But, Jesus, he ain't hardly got no hand left." Slim hurried out, and in a moment returned with a tin cup of water. He held it to Curly's lips. George said, "Slim, will we get canned now? We need the steak. Will Curly's old man can us now?" Slim smiled wryly. He knelt down beside Curly. "You got your senses in hand enough to listen?" he asked. Curly nodded. "Well, then listen," Slim went on. "I think you got your hand caught in a machine. If you don't tell nobody what happened, we ain't going to. But you just tell and try to get this guy canned, and we'll tell everybody, and then will you get the laugh." "I won't tell," said Curly. He avoided looking at Lenny. What would Curly have to lose by telling people what Lenny had done to his hand? Buggy wheels sounded outside. Slim helped Curly up. "Come on now. Carlson's going to take you to a doctor." He helped Curly out the door. The sound of wheels drew away. In a moment, Slim came back into the bunkhouse. He looked at Lenny, still crouched fearfully against the wall. "Let's see your hands," he asked. Lenny stuck out his hands. "Christ almighty, I hate to have you mad at me," Slim said. George broke in. "Lenny was just scared," he explained. "He didn't know what to do. I told you nobody ought to ever fight him." "No, I guess it was Candy I told." Canty nodded solemnly. That's just what you done. Right this morning when Curly first lit into your little friend, you says, he better not fool with Lenny if he knows what's good for him. That's just what you says to me. George turned to Lenny. It ain't your fault, he said. You don't need to be scared no more. You done just what I told you to. Maybe you better go into the washroom and clean up your face. You look like heck. Lenny smiled with his bruised mouth. I didn't want no trouble, he said. He walked to the door, but just before he came to it, he turned back. George? What you want? I can still tend the rabbits, George? Sure. You ain't done nothing wrong. I didn't mean no harm, George. Well, get the heck out and wash your face.